Certified Jerry. But yeah, so episode 2, and we try and do this so it's not blocking my face from the camera. Today we are joined by my very good friend Kelsey Tainsh, and I don't think you realize how much I probably wouldn't have even done this if it wasn't for you. I think our car rides and the degree to which we get into things was very inspiring to me. But also just your story in general, and then the odd commonalities that we have sort of discovered about one another along the way. Um, you find the greatest friends in the strangest of places.
I
And
know. Do you remember how we met?
yes, I remember the first time we met. I picked you up from Beaver Run, and um you were with an instructor, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But my other instructor had a student the first day. I was at a speaking engagement, and they wanted to do the race course a second time, and I didn't want to do it. So me and the volunteer uh, went down and got an Uber back, and they met us back over.
Okay. Yes. Yes. I don't remember that specifically, but
Yeah.
I absolutely remember you getting in the car.
Yeah, and then I was like, "Do you have a business card?" Because I'm
Uh-huh.
like, "I need a driver."
Yep. Yep. I remember that
I
100%.
remember it too.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
It really is funny how these things happen. Um, so let's rewind a little bit. Why don't you give a little background on sort of yeah, like your life and where you're from, and we can kind of go from there.
Sure. Do you want the overall picture, and then we can ask questions from there?
Yeah, I think why not? Let's start pre. I don't really know how to say this.
Well, let
Well,
me.
we want to start like pre-tumor, right? Pre-surgery.
Yeah, but why don't I just give you a small version, and then we can start back from the beginning? Is that okay?
Yep, absolutely.
Um, so my name's Kelsey Tainsh, and I am a motivational speaker,
Mm-hmm.
para snowboarder, and two-time pediatric brain tumor and stroke survivor. And I went from being a normal kid to having a brain tumor to being a normal kid to having another brain tumor and then waking up paralyzed.
And what ages did this occur?
Yep. So I had my first brain tumor was at the age of 5, um, and it was devastating. Um,
I
and
mean, what is that like as a five? Like, could you even understand what was going on?
I didn't realize something was wrong. So I grew up in Orlando, Florida,
Okay.
Winter Park, Florida, and but when we went to go and get an MRI, the doctors pretty much told my parents that I had 2 weeks to live, and if they did a surgery, I'd probably have a stroke and die anyways.
Okay.
Uh, Fortunately, my parents are doctors themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and they knew that was not the right answer. So they flew me to Boston Children's Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts. My dad is a pediatric anesthesiologist and did his residency and fellowship at Boston Children's and still knew people up there. So he called Dr. Mark Rockoff, who is an anesthesiologist and who actually did my anesthesia for my first surgery, June 14th, 1996, and then for my second surgery, which was 10 years to the day, June 14th, 2006.
Got it.
And we got there, and I didn't realize something was wrong, and I didn't freak out until me and my dad and mom and Dr. Rockoff, my dad holding my hand, walked down the hospital room to my hospital room. And once we got to the hospital room, then I realized something that was wrong, and I almost was very strong and still am, and I freaked out, and my mom had to, grab me, and they had to. I'm pretty sure they gave me something to calm down.
Sure.
Um, and I was 5 years old, um, and it was very very, very quick. All that they did surgery the next day.
And so, did anything happen during that surgery, or did it go as planned?
So they only took about 3/4 of the brain tumor out because they didn't want me to have a stroke and they didn't want me to wake up paralyzed.
Gotcha.
And the surgery went well. But gosh, uh,
What did they think? Like, I don't know if how to ask
caused
that.
it.
Yeah, well, yeah, like what? Why? So why only take out 3/4 of the tumor? Like, what part of the tumor was potentially seizure, or not seizure, but
Stroke
stroke
and
causing?
I don't know. Um, that was just, I had one of the best neurologists in the world, and
Sure.
I think they just didn't want me to have my stroke at 15. My brain tumor was called a visual pathway astrocytoma, also known as an optic glioma, which means it sat behind my eyes, it sat behind my optic nerves.
Okay.
Um, and that was just the way that they thought to do it. But gosh, I don't remember this, but my dad has told me on more than one occasion, them uh, before we went back to the operating room, them wheeling me back to the operating room, and my dad um, being right there and me saying, "Please, Daddy, no."
Oh, Jesus.
And him and one of the doctors or whoever's with us said, uh, she doesn't know what she's saying. She's starting to fall asleep. And my dad said, no, she knows exactly what she's saying.
Yeah. Do you remember? You remember saying this?
No, but
Oh, okay.
he's told me. I'm in the process of trying to write a book, and he told, and I wanted that to be a part of my book, and so he told me.
Well, yeah, I think it's definitely a very
But
poignant
but I said
moment.
it but I said it more like a 5-year-old child, and I don't remember exactly how it was, but
Sure.
something to the effect of, "Please, Daddy, no." You know,
And then, so how did that surgery go?
surgery went really well. I had a little bit of weakness on my right side afterwards,
Mm-hmm.
but recovered.
So no stroke
No,
during the
no
surgery.
stroke. Woke up from surgery and then spent the summer having radiation treatment to get the rest of it.
Got it.
And within 6 months or a year, I was cancer free.
Awesome.
I went from being told I had my parents and I being told I had 2 months to live
Uh-huh.
to no longer having a brain tumor.
Wow.
Um,
That's I can't even imagine what that must feel like as a parent.
yeah,
Let alone you, but you were so young.
yeah,
It's like, yeah, I guess it's kind of hard to envision as a 5-year-old.
yeah.
But
It's interesting to me now. As a motivational speaker, I got my start in the youth market, but now I speak to corporations and associations. And lately, I've been doing a lot of nursing conversation talks, rather,
uh-huh.
a lot of nursing talks. And in fact, I did one last year where I was the keynote in front of 3,500, which was an amazing one for me. And it's just, I totally forgot what I was going to say.
No,
I'm
no, it's
sorry.
okay. What I do have a question. So
Oh,
what's the connection?
yes.
Yeah.
So the connection is, again, so I was, after surgery, I had radiation. And now, what is it? 29 years later,
Uh-huh.
I'm now speaking to the people who took care of me. And I get to be the one who's that reminder for them when they're dealing with burnout and all these other things, what an incredible difference they make.
That's awesome.
Like, no, did I remember going back and going back to the surgery? No. But I remember when they had to make the mask to put over my face with radiation, and they used like liquid plastic and they pour it over your face. And them wanting to sedate me, and a nurse saying, "No, I think she can do it," and holding my hand the entire time.
That's awesome.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
and walking me back to radiation, and sitting with me in the waiting room and playing with me and making me laugh. And yes, it was not an easy thing, but to me as a 5-year-old kid, it was not terrible or difficult. I often say that Boston Children's Hospital is not a hospital; it's a playground for sick kids.
That's really nice.
Yeah. And much of this, I owe to my recovery and being here today. I owe to my parents. When I woke up from the second surgery at 15, and we can go back to this too if you want to.
Sure.
I couldn't see.
Well, let's
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, I thought we'd go
you know
back to
what?
that.
Let's
Let's go. Yeah, I thought we'd go
you know
back to
what?
that.
Let's start with
So
it came back.
yes, but do you want to hear the middle part?
Yeah, sure.
So I had the brain tumor surgery, had the radiation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, was cancer free within a year, and then my life got back to normal. And then by the time I was 13, I was ranked third in the world and second in the nation for girls wakeboarding. I was a world champion athlete, and I felt like I was on top of the world. Like
Mm-hmm.
nothing could go wrong. I
Sure.
was smart and funny and pretty and talented, and I was.
You still are.
Well, that's very kind. Thank you. We can get into that later if you want to. So I was happy
Yeah,
and
sure.
I was healthy.
Uh-huh.
Not to say that I wasn't bullied before and after. I mean, my nickname as of the first grade was Brain Tumor Girl.
Oh, wow. That's super shitty.
Yep, I still remember that. I mean, I was only called it a few times, but I remember who called it to me and where I was and how it happened.
Yeah.
You know, we live in a world, unfortunately, where if you don't fit in, you stand out.
Yeah. Yeah. Kids are cruel.
Yeah. But after my brain tumor went away, I had a really great life. In fact, not only was a world champion wakeboarder, but I was a varsity lightweight rower too.
And do you feel like the brain tumor and everything that you went through was a motivational factor in achieving those things, or
Not yet, because I was too young.
okay?
I that's my personality, more than anything. We all have different personalities. My personality is I'm hard-headed, I'm stubborn, I'm type A.
No,
Not at all.
no way.
I know,
That's
right?
crazy.
But here's the benefit to that. And we'll get into this more when we talk about my second brain tumor and my stroke. But if I'm going to do something, I usually, most of the time, give 110%.
Right.
And that's
gotta lay down.
And that's
please.
what I did.
I know. I'm
Hi,
like,
puppy.
you can be a part of the podcast, but you can't get in between the two of us. I'm like,
take a nap.
I'm doing a very good job listening, whereas in the first one, I really didn't.
Yeah.
It was actually, not to take you off track, but it was very hard editing the first podcast because I realized that I just wasn't a very good listener. And then I was like, oh, maybe that's why all my first dates go so terribly.
That's hilarious, but I disagree 150%.
Well, but we're always in the car.
Yeah, that's
I'm like
true.
in the car with my ADHD. It's like for whatever reason, it focuses me in a way that nothing else does, and I feel like that's why we're able to have such productive conversations. But getting away from me, let's go back to what you were talking about.
So you were saying, did I always have that personality? Did I always have that drive? Yes, but I don't think, at least for the first brain tumor, it was based on the brain tumor.
Okay, yeah. You were just too young.
I was too young. Now, I will tell you, my dad has often told me, well, I suppose we should start this way.
Sure.
I have a big family. I have very loving parents. I'm a triplet, and I have older brother and sister who are twins. And my dad has, big family.
I don't think I knew it was that big.
Really?
Like I've met one or two of your sisters, I think.
Yeah. You met Erica. You've met Erica.
Yeah. I like her a lot.
Yeah, Erica's pretty great, and she's an amazing snowboarder. But my dad has told me on more than one occasion, if it were one of your siblings, they'd still be in the wheelchair.
Gotcha.
But here's the thing about that. Well, I don't like to believe that, because I believe that all of us go through challenges, and we deal with them in certain ways, and we learn to fight them when we go through them, right? We don't know until they happen how that's going to work out.
Sure.
I also think he has a very valid point, and that being my personality and my drive and my stubborn, hard-headed, never take the word no, you can't, you'll never perspective was a huge factor in the reason for my recovery, which we'll talk about more.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when we talk about the second brain tumor.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, so I was a world champion athlete, varsity lightweight rower, and had a really great life. I did childhood acting too. That was my dream. I wanted
Nice.
to be a childhood actress.
Very good.
And the Make a Wish Foundation helped me with that.
That's awesome.
And then in 10th grade, I started to have seizures. And
How did that start?
it just started. So they weren't the kind of seizure where you shake and fall to the ground. They were, I think they're called acute gustatory seizures. So I just get a bad taste in my mouth and my face would turn all red.
Interesting.
They lasted about 5 seconds and I couldn't speak while I was having one.
Do you remember like the first time that it happened?
I don't remember the first time, but I do remember them.
Okay.
Because at first it was just, once or twice a month, and then it got to be more and more.
Understood.
And I was having horrible migraines.
That sucks.
Yeah. So here I am, 15 years old. I am wakeboarding, but I'm also rowing varsity lightweight crew. I'm 5'9". So I had to keep my weight under 130 pounds. And I don't want to say that I was starving myself, but I certainly was not at a appropriate weight.
Sure. Well, you were being competitive.
Yes, I was exactly.
Like a lot of people.
It was competitive.
Good, bad, or indifferent. It's like, yeah, it's just kind of comes with the territory.
I'd be at crew practice, at rowing practice, and we'd be in the 8, which is 1 coxswain and 8 people, and we'd be rowing on the water, and I'd start to have a migraine.
Okay.
And my vision would start to get blurry, and by the time I got home, all I could do was sleep.
Gotcha.
So migraines and seizures. And then one day, my sister Erica saw me have a seizure in class.
Interesting.
And she told my parents.
So you hadn't told them?
No, I was trying to hide it.
Yeah, of course you were.
Yeah. What are you mad? Like, seriously? You know me.
I do, yeah.
At the time, in my defense, although it's not a good defense, I didn't know what they were.
Well, so yeah, let me ask if they were as mild as or at least from a visual standpoint. How did she even know?
Because my face would get all red and I couldn't talk.
Oh, okay.
So my face would get all red and I couldn't talk. And she was saying, Kelsey, are you okay?
Got it. And you couldn't respond.
And I couldn't respond.
Yeah, okay.
I couldn't
that makes
speak.
sense.
And she told my parents. And my parents took me back to see the doctors, who ordered another MRI and more pictures of my brain. And there was my brain tumor.
It's unreal. So was it in the same place?
Yep. It came back in the same place.
Jesus.
It had disappeared 10 years earlier.
So what was like the course of action at that point? Or when you found it, how had it progressed? Like to what stage?
Right. It was not good, but it was okay enough that my one request was I wanted to finish 10th grade.
Understood.
I did not want to not end the school year and have to go back and take the school year again.
Makes sense.
So we found out, a few months before June.
Mm-hmm.
So just give you some perspective on how this all played out. When we found out my brain tumor had come back, I was 5'9", 125 pounds, could bench press my weight, and was running 6 miles a day. I was the only one.
Unreal.
Yep, I was the only one on the crew team who could do pull-ups. And before that, even in like the 6th grade, I was the only one on the PE team who could do full push-ups on my hands and feet, military style.
It's unreal.
I was in the best shape of my entire life. And then my brain tumor came back. And I remember it. And here's what's really sad about this. And we're trying not to cry because I've tried to get over this. I was still wakeboarding, but at that time, crew was really my main thing. And I didn't end up making the lightweight boat. I didn't end up making the lightweight boat. I made the third boat. So there's the varsity boat, which is primarily heavyweight rowers.
Okay.
there's the second boat, which is the lightweight boat.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the third boat, which is like the third best boat.
Gotcha.
And me and the 8 other people I rode with helped the team win the state championships.
Well, that's awesome.
By winning, yes. So that was the awesome part, right?
Yeah.
By winning all our races.
Uh-huh.
But there was this other race after the state championships called Stotesbury.
Okay.
And I wanted to go so bad. But the coach was trying to figure out how to make the boat go faster because the boat underneath us was going almost just as fast. And so the way they test that and try to make the boat faster is they race the two, and then they do this thing called seat racing, where they switch people out of the seat they're in and put someone else in it. And here's the thing: at this time, my coach, we already knew I had a brain tumor.
Right.
But the very last seat race, the coach took me out.
Because of that?
The boats were going the same speed. They were finishing almost at the same time. And then I was the last person he took out of the boat and put someone else new in. In fact, the person he put in to replace me wasn't even in the other boat. She was on the dock. I don't know why.
Uh-huh.
And he went and he rode around like a motor boat as we were rowing. And he went and he got her and came back and had me get out and get into his boat the boat with a motor.
Mm-hmm.
And then the boat that I was in won without me in it. In other words, I lost my seat race.
Gotcha.
And when we got back to the dock, he announced that was the boat that was going to Stotesbury. I'm not cry.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
So it is the reason that's so upsetting. Did you know that this could be your last race? Is that why it?
No, it's so upsetting because he knew I had a brain tumor,
Yeah.
and he took me out of the boat anyways.
Understood. So he could have replaced someone else, and you guys would still have had the advantage that you needed.
Yeah. And back to my opinion, there was no reason for him to be doing the seat races to begin with. We had just won the state championships.
Understood. I don't really know crew that well, so I'm just trying to understand, but I get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we went back to the dock, and it was the end of practice, and we pick up the boat and we bring it into the boathouse and stuff, and then every rower, we all meet at the end of the practice, and the coach talks or whatever, and he said, by the way, for that third 8, this is the boat that's going to Stotesbury.
That sucks.
And I was devastated.
I'm sure.
It's one of I don't want to say worst, but and actually it's not even one of the hardest. One of the most difficult things that has happened to me when I was a child.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't believe he did that.
It's kind of crazy how those things from childhood really don't leave you. I mean, I can see the emotion and it's tough. It's tough.
It was awful. And truthfully, again, I told you I was already a lightweight rower, but now I knew I had a brain tumor, and my way of coping was to not eat as much. So my weight was going down too.
I'm sure you were also putting a lot of effort into crew.
Yes.
To not have to think about what was going on.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
And that was a really bad day.
Yeah, it sucks. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And I look back on it now, and as hurtful as it is, and as much as I don't think that was appropriate, he was just trying to make the boat go faster.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where it's it's a really shitty life lesson,
Yeah. And so part of me thinks it was an incredibly inappropriate thing for him to do.
Sure.
But part of me knows one, if I were in the same situation and I were him, I probably would not have done that if a kid had a brain tumor. But two, as I've told you multiple times, I like to win, you know, and
I know.
and I'm hard-headed and stubborn, and second place is not winning.
Yeah.
You don't get a trophy, right? So I understand him doing that, but in my opinion, there's a line that should be drawn between winning and doing the right thing.
Sure. I can understand that.
Right. And that was the end of crew. Now I will tell you this, and the women's coach was not involved with this, but the men's coach helped make this happen. Once I was strong enough after my second brain tumor, after I had a stroke, my teammates and my two triplet sisters, and the men's coach took me back out in the water, and I got to row again.
That's awesome.
And because I don't have movement in my right hand, I use this thing called a grasping cuff, and the grasping cuff velcros on to the oar or the weight or something. And I was able to, and I got to row again.
Very nice.
But that was a hard one for me.
So, what was the timeline between this event occurring and then going into surgery for the next tumor?
So the timeline between finding out I wasn't gonna make that race. I'm sorry, excuse me. Let me put this up a little bit.
No, you're good.
So the timeline was a few weeks after school ended. And I don't know why, but my surgery happened to be on the same day that I had it 10 years earlier.
It's incredible.
Yep, June 14th, 1996. June 14th, 2006. Same neurosurgeon.
Yeah.
Same anesthesiologist. Same hospital, 10 years to the day.
Jeez. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I thought that I was going to go have surgery and then my life would start to get back to normal.
Sure.
And instead I had surgery.
You understood the risk of stroke though.
Yes, to some extent, and my parents certainly did.
Sure.
I don't remember, but I believe so.
Were you kind of confident that because you hadn't had the stroke, the first surgery, that in all likelihood you probably wouldn't have it in the second?
I have no recollection of that.
Got you.
What I do remember is the night before we stayed with my grandfather in Rhode Island, and then my parents rented a car and we drove the next morning.
Okay.
And here's what I do remember. I was sitting in the back and I listened to The Places You Fear the Most, or the places we have feared the most by Dashboard Confessional the entire time. Wonderful song. There. And when we got there, it was really early in the morning. I had to sit with my parents, and I think at that point I started to cry a little, but I didn't break down until I got into the dressing room to change. And that's when I broke down.
And what was it that made you break down? Because since having this surgery before, I would think not that this is like routine by any stretch of the imagination, but was it just the fear of?
It's a 8 to 12 hour surgery.
Yeah,
I
wouldn't know.
Yeah, and it's scary stuff. But you know me. Again, we're just gonna say it over and over again. I'm hard-headed and stubborn. And a lot of the time.
You sure they didn't put a plate in there? I'm kidding.
Yes, they put screws.
Okay, very good.
We can talk about that later.
So that makes it even harder.
Yes, and every time I go through security, I beep.
Very good.
I'm kidding. It was a joke. It was a joke.
Oh, so it doesn't?
No.
I'm like, because, Jason, like half his body is titanium,
Yeah.
so it does. He does set off the alarms.
Yeah.
But
no,
anyway.
I don't actually. I think that for, the rest of crew and all these things, for most of it, I had my, I just kind of kept it in.
Sure.
And again, I think I cried a little with my dad, waiting in the waiting room or waiting in the hallway.
Mhm.
So the way that it works is you arrive and you fill out paperwork, and then they take you back to pre-op, right, where they put a IV in, and do stuff. But before that, the anesthesiologist comes to visit,
Mhm.
and then you go to the restroom or the changing room to change.
Got it.
And I went by myself. I don't remember why. I think I was just a 15-year-old girl.
Yeah.
That was normal. And I went, and that's when I really, like, really broke, really broke down.
Sure.
And then I collected myself and I went back. And they put the IV in and sedated me, and we went back to surgery. And it was really, really hard. But I had an amazing neurosurgeon, and I knew my anesthesiologist, and I knew my neurosurgeon, and I knew my anesthesiologist is not just my anesthesiologist. He's worked with my father, and has since hired me to speak.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Multiple times.
Very cool.
And so I would like to believe, actually, I knew I was in the best hands possible, and around the best people possible.
Mhm.
But it was scary. But again, I tried my hardest to keep it together.
What was so you're put to sleep by the anesthesiologist.
Yep.
You wake up. What happens?
Can I give you a little bit more context?
Of course.
I was put to sleep. They start the surgery. Technology had changed so much. So now, 10 years later from the first surgery, they have an MRI machine built into the operating table.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they could take part of the tumor out and then put me in the MRI and scan me to see how much was left.
Without having to move you.
Yeah, I think they split. Either they slid the rolly bed that I was on, or I think they actually slid the MRI over my head.
I got you.
Technology had changed so much.
Sure.
It's pretty amazing. And I told you, my dad did his residency and fellowship at Boston Children's. So, and the surgery was probably 12 hours. So
crazy. And they did it all at once.
They did it all at once.
Wow.
And during surgery, the head of anesthesia, whose name I can't remember off the top of my head, was going and sitting with my parents, and comforting them and telling them what was going on and stuff. And I don't remember coming out of surgery. And it was not apparent right away that I had a stroke. But
they knew, but you didn't know.
No, they didn't. No, nobody knew.
Oh, really?
And it was a Friday, so the weekend was coming around. And actually, it was a nurse who recognized that I wasn't having movement and that my face looked different and stuff. It was nice. It was nice of you, nurse. I've told you already. I speak to nurses all the time. Don't get me wrong. My doctors are amazing, and my parents are amazing. But I would not be here today with you if I didn't have amazing nurses. And we'll go back to that because I have a story I want to tell you about that.
I will tell you, whenever I go into the hospital, I am the most patient person because I do understand what they go through, and I feel like that's why they're so nice to me. But anyway.
Yeah, and all nurses, in my opinion, are amazing. But it takes an incredibly special person to be a pediatric nurse and take care of a 5-year-old kid with a brain tumor. So it was a nurse who recognized the symptoms.
But this was at 15?
Yes.
Not at 5?
Not at 5. She called the neurosurgeon, whatever.
Right.
We found out I had a stroke. and it was not a partial stroke, it was a complete stroke.
What's the difference?
Right. So, partial, you can have, facial droop or a little bit of weakness on one side.
Okay.
A full stroke is all of it. So, I had a complete facial droop. The whole side of my face was down, facial droop. I couldn't move my arm, my hand, my leg, or my foot. And I looked.
This is all on your right side?
Oh, my right side, right. So, I couldn't move anything on my right side. And it wasn't just externally, it was internally too. I looked pregnant because I had lost all my abdominal muscles.
Interesting.
And I was 122 pounds. And as you just said a second ago, it was my right side and I was right-handed and I had a right side stroke. So here I am. I'm 15 years old. I've just come out of brain tumor surgery. I've had a stroke. And sometimes, again, I've told you this already, I have an amazing support system.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing parents, amazing siblings, doctors, and nurses. But sometimes I think it was harder on my parents than it was on me.
I could understand why you'd think that.
Right?
Yeah, sure.
Because they sat and watched while I went through it.
Well, and you're their child.
Yeah, that too. And I don't really remember my state of mind exactly. In fact, can I share a poem with you?
Yeah, sure.
It's a little bit long, and actually I have two of them, but
I couldn't care less.
Yeah, but
take all the time you want.
But this is how. So me and my mom actually wrote this in 11th grade together for an English assignment that I had, and it's hard for me to describe what waking up paralyzed is like, just talking about it, but I can do it in poetry. So this poem is called The Aquarium and goes like this. I do not really care for fish, she said, when asked if she wanted to visit the aquarium. Being paralyzed is like being a member of another species. She was just like those fish, stuck in a place where she did not belong. How scary it was to be trapped in an aquarium. Her fingers could no longer move, her hand could no longer write, her wrist could no longer go up and down. In fact, she no longer had a hand, and her arm was now a fin. Her paralyzed arm just like a fin, the kind that's been hit by a boat. How scary it was to be trapped. Everything taken away from her, just like the fish in the aquarium. Her legs were like flippers, she only truly had one. And while she may have been able to swim, she could not walk, she could not run, just like the fish in the aquarium. Where do you want to go today? What do you want to do? But choosing to stay in one place was the only true freedom she knew. But it's the largest aquarium in the world. No, she did not want to go look at creatures in their unnatural environments as long as she was living in one of her own.
It's beautiful.
That's what it's like to wake up paralyzed.
It's heavy.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful. So you and your mom came up with that together?
Yeah, we did it for an English assignment I had. A year or two afterwards, but that's what it's like to have a stroke and wake up paralyzed at 15.
I mean, I don't think I've ever heard it put so eloquently. I don't know if that's the right word, but like to get kind of a feeling of what that might be like is very powerful, very powerful.
But here's,
thank you for sharing.
Yes,
it.
Absolutely. And I agree. As I said, it's hard to explain in words, but it's easier to do in poetry. And this was the hardest thing that's ever happened to me, This was 15 years old, having a stroke. I thought my life was over.
Mm-hmm.
But now, looking back, in June 14th, I'll have 18 years cancer-free. And,
wow.
And I wouldn't change it for anything. I'm sure you know Steve Jobs and Apple. So what a lot of people don't know about Steve Jobs, the founder and former CEO of Apple, is that Steve Jobs started Apple and then he was fired from Apple,
Yeah.
and then he got rehired, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in a 2005 commencement speech that he gave at Stanford University, he said, and I quote, "Getting fired from Apple was one of the best things that's ever happened to me. Having a stroke and waking up paralyzed at 15 was one of the best things that's ever happened to me."
And what an incredible way of viewing it. It's
Right.
it's extraordinarily inspiring.
Right. Now, in the moment when it happened, no.
Of course
I was
not.
a 15-year-old kid. I went back to school and lost all my friends, and you know, and I hated school. Um, and
Did you have to relearn?
yes. So, again, so I wasn't. We got into this a little bit earlier. I was telling you how much my parents loved me and stuff. So when I woke up from the surgery, because my brain tumor was behind my eyes, it was behind my optic nerves. My vision was bad for a while. But
Okay.
not only was it bad, it hurt to open my eyes.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah. So they gave me some glasses to put on, but I did not want to open my eyes. And I think I've told you this. My dad is my hero, my best friend. He never left my side. And every morning at Boston Children's Hospital, they've built over it, most of it now, but there used to be a beautiful garden. And every morning he would roll me down to the garden, and I'd have chocolate chip pancakes and Coke, and he would feed me. In fact, not only did he do that, and it was the same every morning,
Mm-hmm.
but because of brain surgery, I was no longer taking in like 2,000 calories a day. I needed to take in, I think, between 6,000 and 8,000 calories every day
Why?
to recover from that surgery.
Okay.
And he fed me every meal. I had a lot of people who loved me and believed in me, and that's one of the most important lessons that I learned from having a stroke and waking up paralyzed. And it wasn't just, my parents and my siblings, right? It was the doctors and it was the nurses, right? And one of the most powerful things that I remember, actually two, can I share two with you?
Yeah, of
Because
course.
these are very deep. Is the first is that I, again, am paralyzed completely on the right side of my body. And sleeping was not easy for me in the hospital. But one night I was in a deep sleep, and I started to wet the bed because I had to go to the bathroom so bad. And yes, that happened, but the amount of time that it took my father and my nurse to get me out of the bed and fix it, what felt to me like 10 seconds. And it happened, but it was like it wasn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
It happened, but it was like it didn't happen because I had these amazing people taking care of me who were there so quickly.
That's incredible.
Still to this day, I've been through a lot of hard stuff. But I think it's hard for some people to imagine lying in a hospital bed completely paralyzed on your right side of your body, and then you wet the bed and you can't get up and help yourself.
Sure.
And as difficult as that was, what was so powerful about it was that I had these people who loved me and cared about me so much that they fixed it so quickly and made me feel okay. Right? And that was just not, and it wasn't just that one incident. One of my very clearest memories was how the nurses gave me a shower every night.
Uh-huh.
And sitting on the shower chair as the nurse bathed me and looking down at my stomach and looking pregnant and crying. I shared with you another poem earlier. Can I share one more with you?
Yeah, of course.
Then this is about nurses, and try to remember it. In English, we call it truly caring for the patient. In poetry, from the patient perspective, it's that moment in time when nothing is fine. As you sit in a hospital shower with water beating down, you look at your stomach. It's distended. You look pregnant. Then you remember you can't move your legs and you start to cry. With tears in your eyes, you look up at your nurse. She smiles at you, tells you it's okay. Everything's going to get better, and you're going to be all right. And you know what? I knew she was telling the truth because my nurses never lied.
You're going to make me cry. These are very beautiful.
Yeah. So I have much appreciation for these, not just my family, but all of these people who took care of me and continue to take care of me.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and maybe you already know this, but a brain tumor is not just a brain tumor,
In what sense?
That, yes, they can take the brain tumor out, but then you have other side effects from the radiation and from different things. I mean, a brain tumor is not just a brain tumor. Side effects and challenges go on for years and years and years.
Sure.
And part of that, too, is because I've had a stroke.
Mm-hmm.
So, I still to this day, although it's not nearly as severe as it used to be, I constantly face, these medical challenges. But I am taken care of by the best people in the world who always have my back and are always there for me. So what happened is, I had a stroke. I woke up paralyzed.
Mm-hmm.
I spent a few weeks or a month in that hospital. And then it was time for me to go to a rehab hospital. Right? So medical hospital, rehab hospital. And while the best medical hospital for me was in Boston, the best rehab hospital, one of the best in the world, is in Atlanta, Georgia. It's called the Shepherd Center.
Okay.
And so what happened is my parents, they flew with me down there. And we arrived, and when you arrive, there's a half circle driveway that you go through, and Mrs. Shepherd, the founder and former CEO of the Shepherd Center, greeted us at the door like she tries to do with all the patients. And I remember because it was about 6 o'clock at night, and I was still completely paralyzed on the right side of my body, so my dad got out of the car, and he came around to my side, and he put me in the wheelchair, and there was a beautiful sunset, and I remember looking up at that sunset and thinking, things are never going to get better. I'm going to be in this wheelchair forever. And I was so wrong.
Yeah.
Right? And they brought me to my room. They wheeled me to my room. And when we got there, there was a physical therapist and a nurse waiting. And I asked them if they could give me a shower. Because, again, that's what the nurses at Boston Children's had been doing every evening.
Right.
But they insisted that we wait till the next morning. And so the next morning came around, and they rolled me in the shower, and I thought that they were going to give me a shower. But this day was different. This day, they rolled me into the shower, turned on the water, handed me a bar of soap, and then that nurse and that physical therapist walked out of the room and left me there.
Interesting.
And to give myself a shower.
Yeah.
And do you know what happened?
No.
Can I tell you?
Yeah.
So here I am, 15 years old, completely paralyzed on the right side of my body. Water is beating down on me. I have a bar of soap in my left hand, my non-dominant hand, the hand I don't write with or do anything, and I tried to start giving myself a shower.
Right.
And I dropped the bar of soap.
Oh, Jesus.
And I couldn't pick it up because I'm in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
So now here
I hate to laugh, but I feel like you got to find the comedy in it.
It's not funny, but it really is.
Yeah.
Because here's why. Again, I'm sitting in the shower now. I've dropped the bar of soap. Water's beating down on me. And they've left the room.
Uh-huh.
But they came back. They came back about, 15, 20 seconds later and showed me how to give myself a shower with my one hand, my my non-dominant hand.
So you think they purposefully did it
Oh,
that way?
no, they absolutely did.
Okay.
They did it on purpose.
Okay, yeah.
And they did it for a reason. And here's why. Well, I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know if I was going to walk or anything. They knew I was going to walk again. But at the time, we had no idea how much of my right arm and hand were going to come back, right?
Sure.
So by sticking me in the shower that day, turning on the water, handing me a bar of soap, walking out of the room, and letting me fail, what they were really doing is they were setting me up for success.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So we all know failure is a part of life, right? We're all going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
But now for me, now that I had only one hand to use, and it was my non-dominant hand, I was not going to fail once or twice or 3 times. I was going to fail 5, 10, 15, 100 times or more before I was able to do something with one hand that most people do with 2.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. Then that one time I'd get it, and I'd be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So so by sticking me in the shower that day and letting me fail, what they were doing again is they were setting me up for success. This was, again, I've learned a lot of lessons over the years from the hard stuff I've been through.
I'm sure.
This was one of the most valuable. That I was going to fail. But as long as I got back up when I failed and I tried again, I would succeed.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, do you know the band Rascal Flatts?
Yeah, of course.
So Rascal Flatts has a song called Stand, and he says it better than I can. Can I share it with you?
Sure.
It goes like this. And no, I'm not going to sing it. Because that is not...
Hey, you do whatever you want to do. Your poetry was beautiful, so...
Well, thank you. Poetry is one thing. Singing is a whole other story. Now, I will tell you, we do it on the chairlift.
Uh-huh.
And in the shower. But Rascal Flatts has this amazing song called Stand, and there's a great part of it that goes, when push comes to shove, we find out what we're made of. We might bend till we break because it's all we can take. On our knees, we look up, decide we've had enough. We get mad, we get strong, wipe our hands, shake it off, then we stand. Because of that nurse and that physical therapist that day, every time I failed, every time the 100 people, the naysayers said, no, you can't, you'll never, that's impossible, I got back up and I tried again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because I had these people supporting me.
Yeah, but it's also you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I know you too well.
Yes.
So I know how much it's you as well. And I'm sure you were surrounded by incredible people. You've basically been saying that the entire time.
Yeah.
But without your own willpower,
Yeah. There's nothing we do in this world alone, and when we work together, everything turns out better.
For sure.
And I told you, I think earlier, one of the hardest things that I had to learn to do was ask for help.
Yeah, I don't love it either.
Yeah, and it's something I didn't do before I had a stroke and I woke up paralyzed.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't ask for help, and I didn't, especially like in sports and athletics, and especially in crew. You don't tell anybody you're in pain or injured unless you have to go to the hospital or you're, bleeding or something.
Right.
Suck it up, buttercup.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to learn to ask for help and to let my doctors, my physical therapist, and my parents and all these people know when I was in pain.
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn all these things. And for a long time, after I had a stroke and I woke up paralyzed, I was in pain. But not physical pain, right? To some extent, yes. But mental pain.
Understood. Which can almost be worse.
It is, right? The physical part of getting better was easy for me because I was a world champion athlete.
Sure.
I may have had a stroke, but I was still a world champion athlete.
Right.
Right? The mental part was the difficult part. So I spent time inpatient at the Shepherd Center, and then we went back to Orlando. And I started one of the most incredible things that my parents have done for me, or at least on the top of the list, is they made me go back to school right away.
That
which
was probably very smart.
it was very smart.
I
and
doubt
it-
you wanted to do it.
Oh no, it was. I've done a lot of hard things. This was one of the hardest.
Sure.
So I went back to school in a wheelchair. I started 11th grade. I think I started like 3 days later or something. I went to a public high school. The elevator at the high school didn't work. All my classes were on the second floor, and they
Of course.
told me to go to a different high school. And my parents threatened to sue. That was really difficult for me because I was in a wheelchair. I lost all my friends, and not only did my parents do so much for me, but my triplet sisters did. And I didn't take all my classes there. I took some online through Florida Virtual School too at the time.
Sure.
So I only was doing half days. Either my sister would come pick me up during lunch, or my parent would drop me off. But a lot of time I didn't go sit at lunch with anybody. I'd go sit in the hallway between the classes because I didn't want to be around people who didn't want to be my friends. But more than that, I also wanted to let my sisters have their time with friends because right after that, they were going to take care of me. And my sisters have done so much for me. And that was really, really difficult. But after a semester, I was physically getting worse.
In what sense?
And as having a stroke, I was physically getting worse because I was going to rehab hospitals where I was being treated like a 60 to 80-year-old.
So they weren't
pushing me.
Oh, okay.
Right? I wasn't being pushed.
So it wasn't like you were deteriorating as a result of the stroke. It
No,
was that you weren't working the things you needed to be working.
I wasn't deteriorating anymore from the stroke. I was deteriorating because I had a stroke, and I wasn't being treated like an athlete. I was being treated like an 80-year-old stroke patient.
Understood.
And so the Shepherd Center has this amazing program called Beyond Therapy. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's beyond regular physical therapy. It's physical therapy on steroids. It's 15 to 20 hours a week of physical therapy, partially with a physical therapist and partially with an exercise physiologist. And a father on the crew team, knew about it and told my parents about it. And I started in Beyond Therapy, and I took all of my classes online. And because I'm one of 5 kids, what we do is we drive up on a Sunday or Monday. I do 15 to 20 hours of physical therapy in 3 days. And then we drive back home to Orlando. And my parents, my mom, my dad, whoever turn it was or whoever was available, did this with me every week for over 2.5 years. I have parents who love me very much.
Yeah.
And that's how I got better.
That's really awesome.
And that's where I started to learn to do things on my own. And my number one goal when I had a stroke and woke up paralyzed was to run again. And I did. At first I, had to learn to walk, and I learned to walk. And continued to work with occupational therapy to do things with this hand. Occupational therapy tried to get me to use my other hand, but it was a lot faster with this hand.
Sure.
So I was doing most everything with this hand. And then I started to realize that I could use my mouth. My mouth is my second hand.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure you see me open water bottles and
stuff.
Yeah. So I have my left hand. And I have my mouth. And I started off walking, and then they put you on a special treadmill that you're in a harness, and they can lift weight off of you.
Got you.
And I still remember the day my physical therapist told me, okay, today we're going to try to run. And I turned to her and I said, I'm scared. I don't remember how. And I did, and it was awesome. And at first it was only, 20 pounds of my weight or whatever.
Right.
But I remember it. And then it was more and more, and it got to a point where I wasn't, running a mile or anything, but we'd run in their big gym with my physical therapist holding on to me.
Uh-huh.
And that was my goal. And then I started to do all these other things. And then um, by the age of 17, 2 years after I'd had a stroke, I learned to do almost everything, right? I could write, type, take a shower, brush my teeth, tie my shoes. I had learned to do all these things. I was walking. I had learned to run. But what I hadn't figured out how to do is to put my hair into a ponytail, into a bun with one hand.
Okay.
Have you ever seen me do this?
I don't think so.
Okay, so I was doing the Beyond Therapy program, but I was also going to occupational therapy, which, as I'm sure you know, is the arm, hand, and shoulder, right? And so I went into occupational therapy one day, and I said to the occupational therapist, today is the day that I want to learn to put my hair into a ponytail with one hand, because I was doing, here, yes, it was a physical therapy, and I was working with exercise physiologist, but I was working out.
Right.
Right? So I always needed my hair put up. In fact, I remember the first day of Beyond Therapy. They worked me so hard, and I was already walking when I got there.
Uh-huh.
They worked me so hard, they almost had to get me a wheelchair. Oh my God, I remember.
Why does that not surprise me?
But here's the thing, it was them too, right?
Uh-huh.
But yes, and I remember it. But again, I had learned to do everything, but I wanted to learn to put my hair up. So I went into occupational therapy, and I told my occupational therapist, today's the day I want to learn to put my hair up into a ponytail, into a bun with one hand. And you know what she said to me?
What?
I've never seen anybody do that before. I don't think you can.
So of course now you had to.
Well, yes, but here's what happened, right? So I walked in. I told her that's what I wanted to do. She told me she'd never seen anybody do that before. She didn't think I could. And I did. It took me 1 hour, and she got fired.
Oh, wow.
I'm kidding.
Oh.
I'm kidding.
I'm kidding. I don't know. I don't know how this stuff works.
No, she didn't get fired. It was a horrible joke. Horrible joke.
Oh my God. Just killing me over here.
Yeah, so
I'm like, I'm trying to be so empathetic, sympathetic, whatever, and you're like,
self-deprecation.
She got fired for telling me I couldn't put my hair up.
Yep. So she didn't get fired. But here's the point. She never told anybody they couldn't. I'm sure she has never told anybody that they couldn't do something ever again.
Sure.
The way to do things is not to tell people they can't, or they won't, or they'll never. The way is we adapt, and we say, maybe we don't do this the way other people do it, but it does not mean we cannot do it. We just have to learn to do it differently.
Sure.
The reason I walk, the reason I'm fully independent, the reason I can do all these things is because I do them differently.
Well, here's a question for you. Did you ever think to yourself that maybe she told you you couldn't do it because that was her way of motivating you to do it?
I don't know if I ever thought that, but I'm sure she said it to me before.
Well, did she know you well enough to know how hard-headed you are? Because that's not a bad technique with you.
Yes, you have a very valid point.
Right?
Incidentally, if anybody, wants to watch me put my hair up for the first time, we videotaped it. It's on YouTube. It's called Ponytail Victory. It's the second one when you type in Ponytail Victory.
Well, hey, we'll put it in the description so anybody that needs to know.
Yeah, it was one of the most amazing things I've ever done in my entire life.
I'm sure. Well, I feel like it's all about those baby steps because even though they're baby steps, they're huge.
Right, and that was the hardest part, right, about getting better physically.
Sure.
It was gonna happen.
Right.
But it was gonna happen slowly.
Yeah.
It was gonna happen so slowly.
I think that's the hardest thing with so many things in this world. I mean, I can tell you just from my own personal experience, like, and anything that you want to be successful at, it takes so much time. And I feel like most people aren't successful at things because they give up.
Exactly. And that's a concept for me that I don't understand,
Hmm.
that I am constantly trying to figure out and constantly trying to encourage my audiences to learn.
Well, why don't you talk a little bit about how you got into the whole public speaking realm?
Oh, that's a long story. Um, um, so I had a
Well, I feel like there had to have been a
yes,
moment, right?
there's two. So um, I had a brain tumor and I had radiation.
Uh-huh.
And then I was a Make a Wish kid.
Mm-hmm.
Make a Wish Foundation, and my wish was I wanted to be in a movie. So they sent me to New York to meet Ron Howard.
Oh, that's awesome. You know, I actually went to camp with his daughter.
Did you?
Yep.
Yeah. So me and my dad went and met Ron Howard in New York City in a cafe. I remember this day. And I thought he'd help me get into a movie. We had lunch. I had a Caesar salad.
Uh-huh.
And then we went back to his studio and watched part of a movie he was working on.
That's awesome.
It was, but that was the end of it. Never heard from him again.
Sure.
My goal was not to meet Ron Howard. My goal was to be in a movie.
Sure.
But that was the agreed upon best way to do it. But I continued to take acting lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad had gone to school with the president of Warner Brothers. And that's how
That
I got.
helps.
Yep. And that's how I got into my first movie. Rumor Has It with Jennifer Aniston and Mark Ruffalo.
Nice.
And while I was on the set doing Rumor Has It, they knew I loved Gilmore Girls. And so I got to walk the stage and, the drops and everything in the village of Gilmore Girls. And then I got to meet the cast of Gilmore Girls, and they were shooting a scene where Rory, one of the main characters, was at Yale. And I turned to my dad and said, I want to be in it. And my dad asked the director, and he said yes. And so at 15 years old, I played a college student on Gilmore Girls.
That's awesome.
And then I did a few other things. And I was so grateful for all the Make-A-Wish had done for me that I helped them raise $250,000 in this huge campaign they do in Florida called the Stories of Light campaign.
Okay.
So we did radio interviews, and we did a billboard, and news stories and stuff. And we were at a fundraiser one night, and they asked me if I would speak. And I stupidly said yes. Not telling my parents beforehand that I was going to get up on stage.
Hey, I mean, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, I was probably 11 years old. And I got up on stage and I bombed. But
you did it.
But I did it. And that was kind of the end of that, right? But then in 10th grade, there's an amazing program for 10th graders all across the country. It's called Hobie.
Okay.
Hugh O'Brien Youth Leadership. And they have, they have 3 in Florida. They have them all over. Uh-huh. And I was a Hobie recipient. And what they do is they have 10th graders from all the high schools in the area, and they bring them to a hotel and for 2 or 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
And me and my triplet sisters got to go together. And they have speakers, and you do activities, you do community service and all this stuff. And the 150 of us, or however many Hobie winners and the staff and stuff, were watching a speaker. And I remember this too so clearly, because his name is Kevin Snyder, and he still remains to be a good friend
Awesome.
to this day. And as I sat and I watched him, he talked about how he was on The Price is Right. And And so I sat in the audience watching this professional motivational speaker speak about how he was on The Price is Right. And something clicked, and I said to myself, this is what I want to do with my life. And that's how, that all started.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we've already kind of gone over the concept that failure is a part of life, right?
100%.
Right? But what a lot of people...
I know it better than most.
And again, one of the most important lessons is that if you fail, you just try again.
Yeah, you just got to pick
You
yourself
you
back
gotta
up.
pick yourself back up, and you just gotta try it, and you gotta try it, and you gotta try. I mean, I remember being at my dad's house one day, and I must have dropped 5 glass plates because this hand was not used to being my dominant hand,
Okay,
right?
yes. Yeah.
And I had to learn. I had to learn to do that. But the point of that all is that you just get back up and you try again. So what happened is, I graduated high school, and I went to college. I went to University of Florida,
Mm-hmm.
and I tried to become a professional speaker while I was in college, and I failed miserably
Why?
because I had no life experience. I spent most of my childhood in a hospital bed.
You hadn't really pieced together.
I hadn't pieced together. I didn't have, because speaking, is about stories and material.
Yeah, absolutely.
Story, point, lesson, right? And humor, of course.
Yep.
And we can do some self-deprecating jokes later.
Well, stories sell.
Yeah.
I mean, any salesperson, any good salesperson worth their weight will
Right.
tell you that the reason they're good is because they're good storytellers.
But here's the thing: when I started trying to become a professional speaker in college, I thought that speaking was all about me and my personal story.
Got you.
When it has nothing to do with me at all, right? I tell my story because it's interesting and it has valuable points, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's how my story and the other stories and experiences I tell relate to the audience and what they take away from the audience. One of the most amazing comments that I have gotten, being up on stage and then talking to audience members afterwards is, I felt like you were talking about my life.
That's awesome.
Or I felt like I was a part of that, and you were sharing the stories of my life.
So give me like a short example of, if you can, of something that's universally relatable that you use in some of your speeches.
Sure. So one of my they call it, what do they call it? Let me think. Main stories, or most poignant stories,
Mm-hmm.
is my hand in my pocket story.
Okay.
And so this story is about how when I had a stroke and I woke up paralyzed, and I could walk again. I had gone back to school. I had lost all my friends. I walk with a slight limp too.
Sure.
But once I was out of the wheelchair and I could walk again, I realized something, which is that if I slow down my walking, so my limp almost goes away.
Mm-hmm.
Because the limp is because I walk fast and the right leg is weaker, so it can't keep up with the left, right?
Right.
But if I slow down my walking, so my limp almost goes away, and I stick my hand. Oh, I can't do it. Hold on. Let's see if I can unzip it.
No, it's okay.
So if I slow down my walking and I stick my hand into a sweatshirt or jacket pocket like this,
Mm-hmm.
it was almost as if my disability and my differences disappeared.
Understood.
Most of the time, people didn't notice anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so for like 10 years, I kept my hand in my pocket and tried to hide my disability and my differences to fit in,
Makes sense.
to be normal.
Yep.
But the point is that we all have challenges, but
Yes.
right? But the things that make you, right?
Mhm.
The things that make us unique and special and different, those are what gives us perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And when we hide that perspective from the companies we work with, the organizations we're a part of, our colleagues, they lose the opportunity to gain a new perspective too.
Well, I think also character.
Yes. And once we are able to reveal those things and learn to love who we are.
Embrace them. Yeah.
Yep. Which, truthfully, even as a motivational speaker, I still struggle with that sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm walking down the street and I see a cute boy who I find attractive. I stick my hand in my pocket. It's funny, but it's true.
Hey, I get it. We all do it to a certain degree.
Right?
Yeah.
But I left the corporate job that I was at to pursue professional motivational speaking.
Sure.
And it took me 4 years. and I faked it till I made it.
You have to.
I pretended that I was doing well, and I wasn't making a lot of money, and I wasn't getting a lot of speaking engagements, and I faked it till I made it. Um, and I always thought when I started speaking that I would start speaking to adults, but that's not the path that ended up happening. I ended up starting in the youth market. First high school, middle school, but now all the way down to K through fourth graders.
And that was specifically bullying, right?
Anti-bullying, kindness, and inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
But even in that market, I wasn't getting booked because, as I'm sure you know from your business and what you're doing, the phone doesn't just ring.
No.
Right?
You've got to pound the phone.
Pound the phone, pound emails.
Yep. Emails probably, yeah.
And I didn't know how to do any of this.
Sure.
And then I don't know how it came about exactly, but I decided to create my own youth database, or my own high school, middle school, elementary school database.
So you essentially created leads for yourself.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But I was specific in how I did it, in that I did it for only private schools.
Sure. Okay.
Because that was the route that I ended up taking. And me and a part-time assistant that I have, we have now started out with one state at a time, and we've learned. So we're now going back and redoing some states because of what we've learned and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But what we do is there's an amazing website called Private School Review.
Okay.
And they list all the private schools in the state.
Gotcha.
Of that state. And so we use Google Docs, Google spreadsheets. And so we copy and paste the names of the schools under the state that they're in. And then we go to each school website and we find the principal and the head of school and the headmaster and the dean of students and the counselor. And we did it by state. By school, by state.
Mm-hmm.
And to say that I spent hours and hours, 1, 2, 3 in the morning, and her as well, on this for years would be an understatement.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. It takes a long time to build a business.
And then we started, and then I had gotten a mentor. And had some other mentors, and with a youth mentor, created an email template that was really good, and we started emailing schools,
mm-hmm.
and I started getting booked.
Nice.
And then from going to those schools and doing well, I started getting booked more, because then they referred me to other schools.
And then where was the, I don't want to say transition, because I feel like you still do both, but how did the corporate stuff come into play?
So I left Coke, and I faked it till I made it for about 4 years. And then 2018 was my make it year, where my income skyrocketed. And then 2019 was better. Primarily, probably 80% schools, and the other 20% a little bit corporate, but more than corporate associations.
Gotcha.
And then COVID hit, and I was out of work for 2 years.
Yeah, like most people.
Yep.
Yep.
And then after COVID hit, I was primarily out of school, excuse me. So COVID hit, and I was out of work for about 2 years. And then a year or two later, I started to pick back up again.
Gotcha.
And it was still mostly schools and a little bit of associations.
Mm-hmm.
And then in last year, I got my CSP, which is the highest distinction recognition you can get as a professional speaker.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
And I was one of the youngest people to ever get it.
Uh-huh.
I know one person who got it 1 year younger than me. And it was only because I missed a year of application because of COVID. So you have to make a certain amount of money and do a certain amount of speaking engagements over a period of 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I missed the money limit 1 year because of COVID. So it took me 6 years instead of 5.
Gotcha.
And so I got this speaking certification. And then also last year, by emailing, um, associations, I got a huge speaking opportunity for trying to think for a nursing conference. Trying to think of the name. Think for a second. Oncology Nursing Society, I think. And that was the most I've ever spoken to. They only had one main stage keynote.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think they had some others, but to my knowledge, I was the main one. And it was in front of 3,500 people, and I got a standing ovation.
Nice. Very nice.
And that has fueled, and so that was the national, right? So most associations have a national chapter, and then they have state chapters. So what happened is I blew it away at the national chapter, and now all the state chapters are hiring me.
How does it feel to be able to do something that most people can't do? Most people can't talk in front of even 10 people.
I think I've told you this multiple times. Snowboarding is my happy place.
That I know.
Up on stage is my happy place. I love it.
Is it? Yeah. What is it about being on stage?
I don't know.
Is it what you're doing? What you're saying?
Yes, it is. It is certainly what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
It is what I'm saying. Although I will tell you, the hardest part of my job is 1, getting the speaking engagement,
Sure.
and 2, coming up with new material.
Sure.
But I love being up on stage, and I love being in front of other people, and I love that I can impact people. There is no better feeling, and it's happened multiple times, where I get off stage and someone comes up to me and says, "You changed my life today," or "I really needed to hear that."
Yeah.
Here's the thing. For the longest time, I never thought I could help people, because I wasn't going to be a doctor or a lawyer or one of those things that many people think about when they think about success.
Mm-hmm.
I have a family of doctors. All 4 of my siblings are doctors. My parents are doctors. I never wanted to do that. School was really hard for me. I mean, I had 2 brain tumors.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But what I've realized over time is that I am helping people, and I am making a difference. In fact, on an average speaking engagements, I help more people than my sisters and brothers and parents do.
Yeah.
And they do great, amazing work. But
I'm sure.
But I can still make a difference, and I don't have to be one of those things that many of us think about when we think about success.
Right. Now I kind of want to get into, how does Breck factor into this? How does snowboarding factor into it?
Right. And I would love that. And here's how all that happened. So, I found my passion, and I was able to turn my passion into my career, as a professional motivational speaker.
Mm-hmm.
But what I hadn't found is what made me happy outside of work. And that was missing for me. And
the athletics.
Yes, exactly. I was a world champion athlete before I had my injuries, or injury, and I wanted to be again. But I didn't have a sport, and I tried. For a while it was swimming. I thought I was going to be in the Paralympics for swimming. My record in the pool since I've had a stroke is a mile. I mean, I used to go from Beyond Therapy to their swimming pool and swim every afternoon. But I was bored in the pool.
Got you. Just wasn't your thing.
It wasn't my thing.
Mm-hmm.
I had learned to run, but couldn't run like far, because I don't have the stability in my ankle.
Got you.
To do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't going to be running. We had done tennis a few times at therapy. And I tried all these other things, and nothing made me happy besides my job. I was surviving, but I wasn't thriving.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just living without living.
Sure.
And I don't remember how I thought of snowboarding. Either it had already come to my mind because um, I had snowboarded once or twice before my injury,
Oh, okay.
or possibly somebody told me about that. But at the time, I had already had 2 knee surgeries, so I asked my knee surgeon if I could snowboard,
Mm-hmm.
and he told me I wasn't strong enough yet, but to keep working hard. And a year later, I asked him again, and he said sure. So, um, I live on the East Coast, and at that time I was still in Atlanta. So I found one of the best adaptive snowboard programs in on the East Coast, which is Two Top Adaptive Sports, outside of Pennsylvania. And I went and I learned to snowboard. And we've talked about this a little bit before. My dad's my hero, my best friend. I tend to tell my dad everything too.
Sure.
And I told him that I was going to go snowboard, and his response was, "Okay, as long as they push you in a sleigh down the hill." And here's the thing: I don't usually do things and not tell my dad.
Sure.
But I did it, and I didn't tell my dad. And then afterwards, I sent him video, and he was impressed, and he said, "You look great." So me and one of my friends, we flew in. Well, she was living in the area at the time, and she picked me up from the airport, and we flew in. And the first day was really, really, really difficult.
Oh, I'm sure it was.
And I almost didn't go back the second day, because even with my ACL knee braces on, which I wear always on the mountain, one of my patellas still almost popped out of place. But I decided to go back the next day. And when I went back the next day, I told my instructor, who was amazing, I want to be here today, but I can't fall today because I'm going to get hurt.
Sure.
And the first day we didn't even really go up the hill much. He had pulled me at the bottom, and we worked on stuff. And we went back the second day, and I told him. And so what he did is we went up the chairlift, and I snowboarded. And every time I was about to fall, he caught me because he didn't put his snowboard on. He ran down the hill behind me and caught me the entire day.
Gotcha.
And that's how I fell in love with snowboarding. From a kind person who cared so much, who was willing to run down the hill behind me so I could learn to snowboard.
Hell yeah.
And that's how I learned to snowboard. So I learned to do that, and I fell in love after that day.
Yeah.
And then after that, I went to Whistler, and then I came to Breck.
Was there any particular reason that you came to Breck as opposed to somewhere else?
While I went to Two Top Adaptive, and while I went to Whistler, and I love them, and they're great, Breckenridge has the absolute best adaptive snowboard program in the country, BOEC.
And BOEC stands for?
Breckenridge Outdoor Education Center. And my first day on the mountain, again, we had to, walk down Ballet Hill.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was at Whistler, and when I was at, I also tried Mammoth at one point before I came to Breckenridge. And when I was at Mammoth, I fell so often, so hard, that I bruised my tailbone and had to walk down the hill.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally got some butt padding.
Very good.
Sorry, just saying.
Yeah.
And again, I remember the first day I was out here. But by that point, I was already in love with snowboarding. After that day, that instructor ran down me and caught me every time I was about to fall. I was in love.
That's awesome.
It took 2 days.
Well, and we have a lot of great footage from today.
Yeah.
Like, if I seem tired at all, or even you,
Yeah.
I'm like, it's because we were riding all morning
Right.
with BOEC, and they're awesome.
Yeah,
They really are
BOEC
awesome.
is amazing. And I found snowboarding, and when I found snowboarding, that piece of my life that was missing from when I had a stroke, and was missing for like 13 years,
Mm-hmm.
I found. And I never thought that I was going to find that. I thought that for the rest of my life, I was just going to be living, not have found this wonderful thing that I love so much, that makes me so happy. I don't live here, but I am out here. I mean, last season I got 37 days. I'm a little short this season.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure you get more days than I do, and I do live here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I come out here and I make it a point to come out here because what I learned after my second brain tumor when I had a stroke and woke up paralyzed is that life is about two things. One, being happy. Two, helping others. That's it.
I like that.
Life is about being happy and helping others.
Mm-hmm.
And I fell in love. And so I just keep coming back. And, but what was the hard part about coming here was transportation.
Sure.
So I don't drive. I have a valid driver's license
Mm-hmm.
because I passed the test because I'm smart, and I did it after I had after I had woken up paralyzed.
Sure.
But I don't drive because I have a visual field cut, so I don't see in the right half of each of my eyes. So the hardest part of being here was, one, getting here, but that wasn't so difficult because I took Epic Express or whatever for a long time.
Sure.
But getting to and from the mountain because I didn't know about Beaver Run yet. So I took Epic for a while.
Yeah.
And I started off at the Hilton, and they were super nice and drove me to the back around the emergency center right by BOEC every day.
Uh-huh.
And that's how I got started. And then, I kept taking the Epic bus and kept doing that. And then there's an amazing event, adaptive sports event called Ski Spectacular.
Yep.
That's put on every year where over 800 people with disabilities come and ski and snowboard and monoski.
It's super inspiring.
It's really, really unbelievable. And that's how I met you.
Yep.
You were my Uber driver when I needed to get from peak 8 to peak 9.
It's incredible. Who knew what kind of an effect that we were going to have on each other's lives?
Yeah.
I think it's a true testament to what happens when two good people come together, because I can sure as shit guarantee you that there's a lot of things I wouldn't have done without your inspiration.
Right. And same for me here. And also, my life would be so much harder if I didn't have you. Too. But I don't mean that professionally. I mean that personally. Right?
I feel the same way.
You know?
Yeah.
And snowboarding became my new love. And a very valid, real point for me, though, about snowboarding is one of the reasons I love snowboarding, and it's so contradictory, right? One of the reasons I love snowboarding so much is because when I get on the mountain and I strap my boots in, or my bindings in, yes, I need help on the chairlift. But once I'm up, I go down the mountain just like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And tell me if I'm wrong, but most of the time, people don't notice that I'm different.
You would never know.
And
you rip it.
Yeah. And I love that. In a world where, unfortunately, and it gets a lot better when you're an adult, but in a world where I am physically different, it is so hurtful when I walk down the street and I know that someone's staring at me. Right? I was at Mammoth. So I was at Mammoth with actually another snowboard instructor that I met in Whistler, and we were walking back to the hotel room. And as we were walking, there was a guy on the floor, a maintenance worker working on the carpet, and he goes, "Aw, you're limping." Now, on this particular time, I did it the appropriate way. So usually that stuff makes me upset. And it's never as upset as I used to be. It used to bother me for days and days. Now it goes away pretty quickly. But this one in particular occasion, and this is what I think that you want me to do every time, because this is what we've been talking about. He said, "Oh, you're limping." And I said, "I'm not limping, that's swagger."
Yeah.
And I walked away.
Well, yeah, it's like I told you, when you fall, if you don't actually hurt yourself, you got to make fun of it, because it's just part of what we do, you know?
Yeah.
But I think I think it's a very I think it's a very legitimate thing that, like, because of everything that you've been through and because of how far you've come, there is that fear in the back of your mind that you could potentially set yourself back by getting into an accident. But at the same time, it's like, what are you gonna you love the sport, and it's a risk. It's a risk we all take in a
Yeah,
way.
and that is difficult. When I take a bad fall, it's difficult. What's more difficult is when someone's staring me at the mountain and I I ride behind them and they turn their head to stare at me.
Yeah.
Right? Um, that's difficult.
Which is so silly. And I've said that to you 1,000 times
Right?
too. Because who cares? Who cares what they think?
Right?
The
Um,
only people that would stare at you and think something negative, and I've said this to you 1,000 times, are losers. Only a loser is going to look at you and think anything other than, oh, it's someone else snowboarding.
yeah, and I mean, well, you two were having a conversation in the back of the Uber today. I was talking to the Uber driver about it, and we got out of the car, and he turned around and he said, "She's awesome."
Well, yeah, because you're very inspiring. And like the lengths that you've gone to are extremely inspiring. And you know, my thing to you has always been, because we've grown so close. I mean, you remember the first time I went out with you, I said, be careful, because now I know you're actually a good
Right?
snowboarder. So you're not going to be able to complain about the same things that you
Right?
normally complain about. Um, but it's I do think it's very interesting, um, that there is still this part of you that is coming to self acceptance, if that's
Yeah.
the
I
right
mean,
word.
I mean, we talked about it earlier when I am walking down the street and I see a cute guy that I find attractive. I still stick my hand in my pocket.
100%.
Right? Um, and I just have to work on that.
And you are working on that.
Yeah. And that's just like everybody else. You know, yes, I am a motivational speaker. Yes, I have been through a lot of hard stuff and I've worked really hard to get better. But I, just like everybody else, still have hard things that I go through, you
Oh,
know,
of course.
and that I'm working on,
Yeah.
you know. Um, but I will tell you this. Um, as much as I've been through hard things and as much as I, you know, have things that I still work on and still struggle with, as we all do, there is no better feeling in the entire world than going down the mountain at 30 miles per hour and I stick my arms out and I feel like I'm flying.
Mm-hmm.
It is, and you got some of it on video today.
Oh, yeah.
It is unbelievable because in those moments, actually, as soon as I step onto the mountain, all my problems, all my worries, everything disappears.
Mm-hmm.
And it's me and my instructors in the mountains.
I think a lot of people would agree and empathize
Right.
with that statement.
You know, I saw this thing on Instagram recently where it was, a guy snowboarding down the mountain, and the person speaking was like, you had a bad day, go snowboarding. You
Mm-hmm.
broke up with your girlfriend, go snowboarding.
Mm-hmm.
You lost your job, go snowboarding. Snowboarding is this amazing thing in the world that brings me so much happiness.
Yeah.
That for so long, again, 13 years,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have that. Again, I had it professionally as a speaker, but not personally.
Sure. I know you have a relationship with Burton, and you've got a pretty strong relationship with Burton. Do you want to talk about how that started and how they've helped you progress in this?
Sure. So, and we talked about this a little bit before. One of the hardest but most important things that I had to do when I had a stroke and woke up paralyzed was learn to ask for help.
Sure.
And what I've also learned over the years from doing that is that um, even though I get nervous when I do it, especially when I do it on a level of like asking Burton to help me
Mm-hmm.
or something, I have to remember in the back of my head that every time I send an email or ask someone for help with something, the worst that's going to happen is that they don't answer or they say no. See, everybody has ideas, but a lot of people don't act on them,
Sure.
right? But the way to live a incredible life is to act on our ideas, right? 1 out of 10 might be the only one that happens,
Mm-hmm.
but you're never going to know if you try. And I think that too many people don't try, right? And
I
this
agree.
is something I learned after I had a stroke and I woke up paralyzed, is that I have to try. And when I started snowboarding, I rented equipment and it was cheap. It was cheaper and stuff. But then I started to get serious about it, and I wanted to purchase my own stuff. But you go online and that's expensive.
Yeah, of course.
Boards, binding, boots, all these things. And I had already known about Burton. Burton is an amazing company.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to ask for help. And what I did is I went online and I found the highest person up in the company I could find.
Uh-huh.
And I emailed them. And I said, "Hi, my name is Kelsey Tainsh. I am a motivational speaker and para-snowboarder. And I am snowboarding more and more. And I would like to continue snowboarding, but I can't because I can't pay for my equipment.
Sure.
And I was wondering if you'd partner with me. And if you can help me, when I go and I travel and speak, I'll speak about Burton and the amazing difference that they make. At the time, I was speaking primarily to youth, so my market was 14 to 22-year-olds,
Okay.
which is a huge market to them. So I put that in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not think I was going to get a response back.
Sure.
And a week or two later, I did.
That's awesome.
And that person, who I later found out was Jake Burton's assistant, referred me to another person. And I was told, your story is inspiring and we'd love to help you out. Please go to our website and pick out everything you need and send us a list and we'll send it to you.
Mm-hmm.
And a week or two later, I got so much stuff from Burton. I got new board, new bindings, but not just regular bindings and boots. I got regular binding and boots, and I got step-ons.
Mm-hmm.
New jacket, new pants.
Well, we love the step-ons.
Yeah. When I was introduced to the second person who was going to help me get the stuff that I needed to continue to snowboard, I didn't know about the step-ons, and she told me about them. And if I remember correctly, her wording was, "We would also love you to try our new step-ons." I was like, "What is that?"
Yeah.
And they sent them to me, and I did, and it was amazing.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah.
I use them. I've had them for 7 years.
They're amazing for everybody, but especially for an adaptive snowboarder.
Mm-hmm.
And then what we realized after a year or two was that the lever to get out of the step-ons can be switched to the inside. So we put it on the inside, and that made a huge difference. And then a year or two later, we realized that one of the reasons I was struggling so much on the chairlift is because my right leg is weaker than my left leg. And that's my back leg, so that's the leg that I have to, would have to use to push and stabilize and stuff.
Right.
So then we started riding the chairlift with both of my feet strapped in. And that was life-changing.
Yeah.
And, today, the first time we got off the chairlift, I did do it myself. And I can, but not all the time. So one of the BOEC instructors helps me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine.
And
that's great. Actually, it's not fine. It's great because it's no longer a problem to ask for help.
I mean, the BOEC is awesome.
Yeah.
And just so the audience knows, I will be putting all of the BOEC information in the Spotify description and the Instagram description so that if you'd like to donate, they're a phenomenal organization.
It's really amazing.
I now know so many of them because of you, and have had the pleasure of riding with all of you. And yeah, it's a really, really phenomenal organization. They do so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a world where I often stand out because I walk a little different and my arm looks a little different, I walk into the BOEC and I'm treated just like everybody else.
Oh yeah.
You know, that's nothing. Well, obviously, they're there to help me because that's the reason I'm there, right? I'm an adaptive snowboarder. I'm a para snowboarder. I do need help on the mountain. But that's not how I'm treated. I mean, and we go and we rip.
Oh yeah. Oh, I know. I've been there, what, 2-3 times
Yeah.
now? I'm like, I know better than anyone, and we're gonna put the footage up, so everyone else will get to see too.
Yeah.
How do you feel as though snowboarding has impacted your public speaking career?
Not much yet, but I hope it will more.
In what ways?
In what ways is that I haven't yet brought it into my speaking engagements. I don't talk about it much.
Why is that?
I don't know. It just hasn't. You know, again, one of the hardest parts about being a motivational speaker, a professional speaker, is new material and new stories. But it's also putting those new material and new stories into the speech you're already giving. I edit my speeches based on the audience and who I'm speaking to, and I learn about the organization. But I have my main core speech, which is called "I'm Not Limping That Swagger," and so I just haven't quite put it in there yet. But it is certainly something that I'm going to do. And what I also would like to do is, gosh, we took so much good footage today. That's not on my website yet, and I would like to create a snowboarding part of my website too.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about your website? And I'm also going to put this obviously in all of the descriptions as well, so people can access that. But
yeah, of course. So just like you have a website for your business, I do as well. And my website is just my first and last name, KelseyTainsh.com, KelseyTainsh.com. And you can go on there and you can see my different speeches for the different organizations and groups I speak to. And I have a page where it talks about press, which is where I'll be putting this interview. And you can go and look at past clients.
And people can book you through this?
Yes, people can book me through the website as well.
Fantastic.
As well. Gosh, it was redone a few years ago, and it's really nice. And actually, we just redid the picture on the homepage, and it's the picture of me speaking to 3,500.
We got to do a little something, okay? You just got to trust me, all right? Just stay there. We got to put these on your eyes. Yeah, this guy on here. Okay, all right. Can you see anything?
Yep, no.
Okay, very good. Now, just give me 1 second. You listened to my advice this season, and you pushed yourself to places that I don't even think you thought you were capable of going. And as a result, I feel sort of obligated to up your game in a very Colorado way. So if you'd like to take off that face mask, you can take it off. This
Oh my gosh.
is your Never Summer board. Welcome.
Oh my gosh. It's so nice. Are you kidding me?
I am not kidding you.
Let me see the back. Oh my gosh.
From Certified Jerry to Kelsey Tainsh.
Are you kidding me?
No.
Oh my gosh. I know now. This is why you were asking me what size board I ride the whole day. I was like, what is going on? And you would not tell me.
Yes.
Everything makes sense now.
You figured it out. Yes. Yes.
It may be the nicest thing anybody's ever given me. Thank you.
You know I love you.
I love you too, my friend.
We love you all. Thank you for joining. We'll see you next time.
Shaka bra.